Hello, everybody. Welcome to an experimental video about ASMR. Now, today, I just thought I'd record an ASMR video about politics. Now, I just got a standalone mic. The Razer Siren Mini was $50 USD. And I thought, why not try out an ASMR video? Now, I'm not going to be doing too much. I'm not going to be pulling out many stops here. It's just a normal, soft-spoken whisper ASMR video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the 2022 Senate elections in the United States. I'm not going to be doing much editing, but I'll try my best not to make too many loud sounds as I talk about this video. Now I'm just going to be talking, so, about politics and giving my opinion on the Senate races that are going to be going on in November of 2022. So, the best thing to start out here with Senate races is obviously not every one of these races is going to be competitive. Of course, some are taking place, most are taking place in safe states, either for Democrats or Republicans. Now, in this particular video, I'm going to talk about a normal scenario in which a potential Trump Patriot Party does not affect the Republicans and it does not come into reality. I might do another video where that is the case in a second scenario, but currently we're just going to do a run-of-the-mill 2022 Senate race. Now, there are 35 Democrat seats not up for election, and 30 Republican seats not up for election. So, and of course, there are going to be safe states, and I'm going to label them right now. The Democratic safe states are going to be Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Colorado, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. Now, I'm using, as you can see, YAPMS, which they have not yet updated, and therefore this is a Senate map that was prior to the Georgia runoffs in January. Now, as we know, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock won those seats. So, since Jon Ossoff won his seat, this is going to be blue, because this was indicative of the special, the normal election that Jon Ossoff won, because there is only one election going to be in 2022 for Georgia. So the Democrats stand at 46 seats, and they only need 4 to control. I count Colorado as a Democrat safe state. While the margins might not be in a safe margin, which is generally more than 15% of the vote, there is absolutely no way that a Republican can win in this seat, in this state, especially after we've seen Hillary Clinton win it, as well as Joe Biden and Barack Obama, on top of them getting 2 blue senators in, this is a very solid state, in the same way that Virginia and New Mexico are solid states. While they might not be in a safe margin of victory, they absolutely are on one party's side. So, now we're going to be labeling the Republican safe states, at least in my opinion. The Republican safe states are in Alaska, Utah, Idaho, North and South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, and that is it in my opinion. Now, that means the rest of these states are toss-ups, or they can go either way. Now, you might look at this map, and you might ask me, why is Missouri a non-safe state? And the reason is because Roy Blunt is up for re-election, and even when he was up for re-election in 2016, he was further not elected by a very large margin. In fact, he only won that state by 3%, which means even with an incumbent that was relatively popular, Democrats can still field a candidate that can do well in Missouri. Does that mean that Democrats are going to win? Of course not. But it means that they have a strong chance of it. The chance isn't there. I would give it a small chance. And given the opportunity, it would be likely Republican. But, nonetheless, I do think that Democrats can be competitive there. And as a result, I'm going to label it as a toss-up. So, as it stands, the Democrats have 46 seats, and the Republicans have 43, the rest of them being toss-ups. As we know, the Democrats need, in this case, 4 seats for control. The Republicans need, they need 8 in this case. Democrats in the Senate now is currently split 50-50, but the Democrats need control because, the Democrats have control because of the vice president, who is Democrat. So, if the Republicans want to break this, they need to gain 8 seats. And that isn't impossible at all. Now, the rest of these are, of course, toss-up and can go either way. So, first looking from left to right, first let's start with Nevada. I'm going to characterize. Now, just to show, safe is obviously this darkest color. Likely is the color below, and then lean is the color after that, and then tilt is barely. So tilt is a very small margin of victory. I probably will not be using tilt, although I might. So in Nevada, it's clear that Democrats can do very well in Nevada, and being in the Sun Belt, a state that is a place that is rapidly growing bluer, states such as Arizona, Georgia, and Texas are great examples of this, rapidly shifting to the Democratic column due to minorities and their effect on the population, and how they overwhelmingly vote for the Democrats. So, Nevada is a product of this, I guess you could call. So, even in 2020, the Democrats can take away Nevada with 3% more of the vote, which puts it as a lean state. Now, when they first elected the senator, who I cannot remember the name, she also, I believe it's a she, also won with about 3% of the vote. So, Democrats can definitely do well in this state. and they have. In fact, characterizing it as a lean state is about as perfect to the definition as you can get. This is 100% a lean democratic state. Now, of course, these are not predictions per se, as we don't even know who's running for most of these races. But if I were to have to give it a characterization, it would be lean Democrat. Of course, Democrats have a pretty nice grip on the state, although it's not perfect. I do expect the state to currently go to the Democrats by about a margin of 3 to 4%, I think, as it gets a little bit bluer as we go on. Now, it is also worth noting that that the opposite party does very well in midterms. To the party that is already in office. So, for example, Republicans would do well in 2022 on paper. However, the reason why I do not necessarily believe that to be true this time is because of the splits and the schisms within the Republican Party as of current. So you look at what happened at the Capitol on the 6th, and certain Republicans who have decided to embrace it, and others who have denounced it. Now, you look at a poll that came out recently saying 64% of Republicans would support a Trump Patriot Party. Excuse me. Would support a Trump Patriot Party. That means they side with Trump more. So the GOP is in a big split. And because of that, and because of how much they need to get away from Trumpism, because it has been shown that Trump is not very successful among the American people, they have a lot of work to do. And because of that, their approval is falling very, very low. In states like Georgia, the GOP have been overtaken in approval by the Democrats. And that includes the senators such as Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. So the Republican Party is in deep trouble, especially in the House and in the Senate. And because of this, I think Democrats can perform better than normal. So moving on to Arizona. Arizona, Mark Kelly is completing the term of John McCain, who Martha McSally appointed, and Mark Kelly won against Martha McSally in 2020. Now, since Mark Kelly is finishing that term, he is going to have to be re-elected in 2022. Now, the direction that Arizona is going is it went from a relatively blue state to a relatively red state to now a competitive blue state. And in 2022, we are 100% going to see how blue the state is come into fruition. Currently, I think Mark Kelly is a perfect candidate for Arizona. I believe that he was extremely electable, and that does hold true if you look at the margin, which was bigger than Biden's margin in Arizona. I think he is a moderate candidate that can really bridge the gap as the Arizona GOP dies in a dumpster fire because it's having a very bad time with itself. So again, because of the shifting tides of how the electoral map is changing, as well as Mark Kelly's electability, I believe this to be another tilt state that Democrats can definitely do better in than Republicans. Now, of course, lean margins for both of these states do not mean that they are locked in Democratic hands. They are not at all, and they are definitely competitive. A strong GOP candidate can easily win back Arizona, and possibly even in Nevada. But, nonetheless, we're going to move on. In Iowa. Iowa is a state in 2020 that blew the expectations out of a lot of people. Now, it was expected to be a very close race with Donald Trump coming out on top. However, it turned out being a relative blowout for Donald Trump. On top of that, it was also a blowout in the Senate level. Joni Ernst won her seat by about 7 to 8% against Teresa Greenfield, which is amazing. It's actually astonishing because the polls did not show that at all. There was one poll presidentially that showed Trump up by 7%, and that was the one that was correct. I think it was a Seltzer and Co poll. That being said, this is by no means a state that is safe GOP, but the Democrats have a huge uphill battle here. I think too many people characterize Iowa based on how Obama did in Iowa. And it's clear that time is changing, and we're going to get back into that when we look at Ohio. I believe Iowa right now to be a likely Republican state. It is overwhelmingly likely the Democrats are not going to be able to pick up enough ground with Iowa's predominantly white voter base that generally votes Republican in a span of 2 years. The state might be competitive, but Republicans are almost certainly going to take it away. And that is almost certain with Missouri as well. Like I said, I think Democrats have a small chance here. However, that chance is very minuscule, probably about 5 to 10% right now. Now, I know that percents can be a bit arbitrary, but the chance is there, and therefore I don't want to label it as a safe state. So, I'm going to again label this likely, though I do not think that it is set in stone. Now, if the Democrats end up doing very, very well, they can actually probably come within 1 or 2% or even win this state, although that's very unlikely. Moving up into the Rust Belt for Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin. Ron Johnson, the current incumbent Republican senator there, is relatively unpopular. And the reason that he's relatively unpopular is because of his vow to Trumpism and his fighting and his voting against of the certification of the electoral votes. Now, because of this, he is already in somewhat of hot water, as well as he has said in 2016 that he will retire in 2022, but he has since walked back that statement. Because of that, I think that he is in a very unpopular position. This is a very toss-up state, and the Democrats are going to pour tons of money into Wisconsin to pick up this state. Because of how competitive it is, and because of how the Democrats are going to fight tooth and nail to get Wisconsin, I'm going to label it tilt blue. I think that because of Ron Johnson's unpopularity, as well as the Democrats' need for Wisconsin, in a way, if they want to stay relevant in the Rust Belt, they are going to take Wisconsin and they are going to run with it. Now, in Ohio, this is a state that is similar to Iowa and Missouri. However, Rob Portman has recently said that he is going to resign. And because of that, because before I would label this as a safe red state, which I know is crazy, a state that the Democrats could reliably do well in the Obama era has now changed to being a likely to safe red state. And I think part of that is due to how well Trump did with this state both times. But you have to ask how much of that is because Trump could turn out his base. Of course, Democrats can still be relatively competitive here, but only presidentially and only senatorially. It has one blue senator right now, and it has one red senator, and the red senator is up for re-election. Not re-election, it's an open seat now. And it's an open seat because Rob Portman is retiring in 2022. So, Rob Portman means that there is no incumbent advantage, and it is possible that that Democrats can actually field a relatively good candidate here and might be able to win over the base. Now, it would be a moderate Democrat. It would not be a progressive by any means, but it could definitely end up being competitive. But because of how well the Republicans have done in Ohio, I find it very unlikely that Democrats are going to be able to bring that back. And because of that, I'm going to label that as likely red. Moving our way down south to Florida. Florida is, funny enough, in another similar vein as Iowa, Montana, Missouri, and Ohio. Marco Rubio, who is up for re-election, is extremely popular in Florida. And because of that, I do not think that Democrats are going to be able to field a good enough candidate in front of Marco Rubio, and because of that, I'm going to label it tilt. Likely red. I don't know what I'm talking about. Democrats can field a good candidate here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll win it. And if they do win Florida, it would literally not be more than 0.05%. But I believe that to be almost impossible. I think the chance is there, but it is almost entirely impossible. Looking our way into Georgia, Raphael Warnock, who completed the term, similar to Mark Kelly, completed the term of Johnny Ickeson, is going to be seeking re-election now. Raphael Warnock did better than Jon Ossoff in the runoffs, and I believe that to be the case because of his opponent. His opponent was Kelly Loeffler, a very, very, very unpopular Senate member who was extremely rich and didn't seem to care about the Georgian people. So he ended up getting 0.8% more of the vote. I do believe that without him going against such an unpopular senator, it would probably be just about even with Jon Ossoff, both getting 1.2% victories. But Raphael Warnock managed to get a 2% victory. So, of course, some of his success is chalked up to voting rather against Loeffler instead of for Warnock. Now, Warnock is quite a radical Democrat. Now, of course, he was coined that by, radical liberal, coined that by Kelly Loeffler, but he actually is relatively radical, and he has said things that the normal Democratic Party would not jive with. Things such as you cannot serve God, and you cannot serve God and the USA at the same time. That he has said quite many anti-police rhetoric. He has said quite a lot of anti-police rhetoric, along with some other things, and he is anti-Israel. Now, the Democrats are not a huge fan of this. Of course, they're going to run with Warnock because he is well enough popular against black people in Georgia, which now are going to, soon enough, make up a majority of the Georgian population. I do think that unless Warnock does something awful, he is going to be a non-favorite to win. Now, if you look at favorability, Warnock still has a higher favorability than Jon Ossoff in the state. I think by 10%. His approval rating is like 54-44, which is very good. Now, he only has 2 years, which means he can't do that much bad things, or that many bad things in the state. Because of that, and because of Georgia's nature, again, very, very similar to Arizona, I'm going to label it tilt blue. I think that Warnock has a slight edge in the state. And of course, at this point, as you can tell, Democrats are going to control the Senate, according to this. They have 50 plus the VP nod, which gives them 51 votes, which is a majority. Moving our way to North Carolina. North Carolina is a state similar to Ohio. It has a retiring Senate member, which is Richard Burr, the Republican. Now, making this an open seat in North Carolina is very important. Now, if you look back at the 2020 Senate map or the Senate race for North Carolina of Cal Cunningham versus Tom Tillis, the incumbent Republican, Cal Cunningham barely lost, and that is likely because of his cheating scandal. So, you look at North Carolina and say that is a state where the Democrats can 100% get elected, and it is a part of the Sun Belt, and because of that, being part of the Sun Belt, it is going to become more Democratic. Now, of course, Obama carried it twice, Clinton didn't carry it, and Biden also barely failed to carry the state. So, what this means is that I think Democrats have a huge shot here, especially since it's an open seat and they don't have to worry about incumbency advantage. But because North Carolina has an identity of being Republican, I do believe that it is a current tilt red state. This state is truthfully a toss-up, and I shouldn't be categorizing it at all, but because I want to characterize it, I think it could stay GOP for maybe one more term, but we'll see things develop. Now, moving on to Pennsylvania, my home state. As we know, Biden managed to flip this state by 1.2% in 2020. And it is a part of the Rust Belt, which is growing ever more red. Now, it has already a Democrat senator, and is the other open seat as incumbent Pat Toomey is going to resign. Now, this leaves an open seat and a lot of candidates for the Democrats to choose from. I believe the front runner for those candidates currently is John Fetterman, a Democratic socialist, the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania. He is very, very popular, actually, and is a good figurehead for, I believe, Democrats in Pennsylvania. Now, they could also pick Connor Lamb, which I believe is a House district member, who is more moderate, and he's also openly gay, which could change things up for the Democrats. Of course, I'm not saying that to be judgmental or anything, or to say that he would do worse or better, but it is some ID poll that Democrats would love to play with. So, looking in Pennsylvania, I think, Trump was really good at turning out his base. And Pennsylvania still has a decent amount of life left as a Democrat state. And because of all the candidates that can appeal to many people here, whether it be the progressive wing with John Fetterman or the more moderate with Connor Lamb, I do believe that Democrats are going to be able to pick up the state. Now, you also have to factor in how Democrats, if you thought they were going to care about Wisconsin, they are going to care twice as much about Pennsylvania. This state is extremely important to them. And because of that, it is likely that Democrats are going to pour the majority of money into Pennsylvania to flip the seat. And because of higher turnout, I do think that they are going to be able to turn it out for Democrats in Pennsylvania. Because of that, I'm going to label it again tilt blue. Of course, things can change. We'll have to see how it goes. Now, the last state is New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is a state I can't really characterize. And the reason for that is because of I don't know who is running. Maggie Hassan is up for re-election. Now, it depends on who she goes against. There is a very, very, very popular Republican governor, Chris Sununu. He is extremely popular in New Hampshire. And if he runs, Democrats are going to have to put a lot of resources to keep this state solid blue. And because of that, and because of Chris Sununu's ability to run, I do believe that if he does run, this would be a Republican lean state. If that he doesn't run, I find the incumbency advantage as well as the nature of New Hampshire to be a lean Democrat state. So, because of that, I seriously cannot rank this state. I cannot give it a characterization, which I know feels cheap, but I can't, in good faith, tell you if it's going to be lean blue or lean red, because we simply don't know who is going to run yet. Of course, as this goes on, maybe I'll do more of these videos. And I'll talk more about this, and when we find out who runs, I'll be able to characterize New Hampshire. But as far as that goes, this is where I believe the 2022 Senate races stand. Most of these seats can go either way, if they're labeled lean or tilt. We'll have to see as it goes on. We still have almost 2 years to have these candidates run and figure out who they're, figure out who's going to run, and figure out where, and figure out the polling, and, all the nuance that goes into American electoralism. But, if you're still watching this, thank you very much for doing so. This is my first ASMR video. I really don't know how it's going to turn out. It would be great if you can give me feedback or, tell me better things to do. I'm definitely interested in doing more political ASMR content, or just ASMR content in general. It's something I find very interesting. I don't mean to be a pro. I'm not. I'm just using this mic I got. It's relatively low quality for a standalone mic, with my awful voice. But thank you all very much for watching this video, if you still are, and without anything else to talk about, good night.